Hello, everybody. I'm just want to I would love to welcome you to the International Conference for Sustainable Ecological Engineering Design for Society 2023 that's being held at the University of Suffolk. My name is Darryl Newport. I'm Professor of Energy and Sustainable Development here at the university, and I'm also Director of the Suffolk Sustainability Institute. I think it would be remiss of me not to say thank you to a number of people to actually for getting us to this point in the conference already. I'd like to say thank you to Leeds Beckett, especially Beth Jones, who I think most people have been in contact with over the last few weeks or even months or even year with regards to the conference, and a number of people at Leeds that have been really, really helpful, such as Sahid and the team there. I'd also like to thank our other co-chairs and partners at the University of West of England, Professor Colin Booth, and at Loughborough University, Professor Chris Gorse. And we are actually sponsored this year by the Chartered Institute of Building, Emerald Publishing, and IEMA. And I think that as we go through, we will have awards that are actually then delivered through those sponsorships. Just a little bit about the University of Suffolk. We are quite a new university. We've been delivering directly to our students for the last 7 or 8 years. We are putting sustainability at the top of our agenda as we move things forward, and are looking at actually opening up a number of courses and opportunities within that area. The university has recently been ranked top in the whole of the UK for its reduction in carbon, so it's decarbonisation. And we, over the last 5 years, had actually reduced our carbon by 64%, which is no mean feat, I can tell you. It's going to be difficult, obviously, for the future, but we aim to look at dealing with this as best and as positively as we can. The university has developed and just opened up a new smart house living laboratory with our partners over at BT, and we are keen to develop that opportunity with BT, and we've also set up a £10 million Digitech Centre. I might talk about that a little bit later on. But the whole university itself is looking into and developing the opportunities around its physical infrastructure and sustainability, as well as actually developing a theme-based academic process. The Suffolk Sustainability Institute was launched 2 years ago, and we have 3 key areas of opportunity that we're looking at. And these actually they take the themes that we're looking at with regards to the conference this year. One is around green infrastructure, but we've included blue and green infrastructure here. And we're looking at a number of different areas of opportunity around urban agriculture, sustainable rural economics, and the urban green infrastructure itself. My area of opportunity and challenges that I'd like to get into is energy and resource management. I'm really interested in developing circular economy, but actually sustainable materials for the future, and especially around sustainable construction. And then finally, but most importantly, sustainable healthy communities, how we work with our communities to look at developing behaviour change that is beneficial for society and for nature. And finally, we're currently in the process of developing an application to become a member of the Global Centre for Excellence with regards to education for sustainable development with the United Nations University. So I'm really looking forward to actually moving things forward with this, with the University of Suffolk, and making us one of the most sustainable universities in the country. Suffolk itself as a destination, we're rural, We're on the sea. We're on the seafront, well, close to the seafront. Felixstowe is a couple of miles down the road. There are lots of lovely beaches and walks around the areas around our thriving towns within Suffolk. We're only 60 minutes from London, and that is the centre of London, so quite easy to get to. There's a lot of history and cultural opportunities and wonderful spaces to visit. We're lucky actually that our campus is based on the waterfront here at Ipswich, and it's an area of current regeneration, and we're very, very lucky that we have quite new infrastructure. And I'm really hope that you will find the opportunity sometimes in the future to actually come and visit us, and we'll receive you with open arms, and there's an opportunity for utilising the facilities within the university. As I said previously, that the Digitech Smart House solution that we've actually set up is key as a living laboratory. We're looking to work with a number of other universities and also BT, and we're setting up a number of programs of monitoring and data acquisition around indoor air quality, the issues around developing retrofit solutions. And currently there are a number of projects that are ongoing. I mean, the project itself has cost £10 million, and the opportunities are developing even further. We're developing the first ecological digital twin as a partnership with Anglian Water and Microsoft, and in collaboration with BT, we're also setting up Space East and with the local enterprise partnership, and looking at the opportunities around space-based energy infrastructure. So I'd say look at this space, but the opportunities are growing for the university in this area. One of our new areas that has recently been opened and developed within the last 6 months is our Health and Wellbeing Centre, a £15 million project, key to developing a sustainable society and community. The opportunities of working with our local communities and other specialists in this area is a great space. We're working with mind in terms of mental health, and we're obviously looking at physical health as well, but a great opportunity to come and have a look at some of the new facilities that we're opening up. The conference themes. We've got an amazing array of conference papers, and as I stated before, we've tried to keep them around our 3 main themes for the Sustainability Institute, and I'm looking forward to listening to some of these key papers over the next 3 days. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to make sure, I just want to check with Beth, do we want to go through an explanation for today's proceedings, or should we actually go through and do the keynote speech first of all? What do you think is best, Beth?
I think we could do a quick tutorial. I'll just share my screen.
Okay, brilliant.
There we go. So I'm hopeful that everyone's downloaded the desktop app, and you should have access via Leeds Beckett Guest. So if you click up here, if you're logged in as yourself, there should be options to navigate to Leeds Beckett, and it should say Leeds Beckett University, and you can log in as a guest to us, which then gives you access to the full Teams page. And from here, it's easier to navigate through the different sessions. You should also have the individual calendar invites. So if you click on your calendar, they should be accessible here, but it's just a bit more user friendly on here, and you can see all like the discussions that are going on. So in general, there's just some information about the presentations and how to join a session. So if you get stuck, you can refer to there. If you need technical assistance, just pop a new conversation in here, and I'll try and get to you as soon as possible on there. The social and networking spaces, there's sessions open all day. So if you're in a session and your time runs out and there's more questions, feel free just to pop into one of these social spaces, and you can continue your conversations. We're going to ask that during the presentations that everyone keeps their microphones and cameras off, just to help with the streaming so that the presentations play okay. And then when it gets to so after each session, we'll have a question and answer where you can have your camera on to ask the question, or you can raise your hand or pop the questions in the chat, and the chair of the session will get round to as many questions as possible within the time. So each room, I think everyone should have access to the programme. So each room is reflected on the programme, and you can just click through these, and then there's a session set up for each programmed session. So you just click in here so that when these are happening, you'll be able to see a join button, because someone from Leeds Beckett will have already entered in here, which will then give everyone else access, if that makes sense. So just on the side here, there'll be a join, it'll say join, and you can join the session. Yeah, I think that's about everything. If you do have any questions, yeah, just pop them in the technical assistance space and we'll get round to you. I think that covers everything.
Yeah, that's great, Beth. I just wanted to say a couple of things. If you do want to ask a question of the speaker that's actually up and presenting at the time, you can always put it in the chat as well, so we can pick that up. In most cases, we have in all cases, we have a chair of each room and proceedings, and we also have a moderator, and the moderator should be able to pick up any questions that anybody wants to ask. So hopefully that covers everything. Can I one question, Beth? Do we have an email that people can actually connect to? I'm just worried about the number of people that we have at present and whether we're having any technical difficulties with people at the moment. Are people able to contact us externally?
Yeah, so everyone has access to my email. I think most people have been communicating with me, and I've had a few emails this morning, so I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think we should have done.
Thank
okay,
you.
So we can get on to the next part of the day, which is our first keynote speaker. Let me bear with me a second. So our first keynote speaker today, and amazingly enough, that worked out really, really well. Grazyna has just joined us automatically. That's great. Now, Grazyna, and I apologize, Grazyna, I'm just making sure that if I get your name, I'm hoping I'm getting your name right. I've got it as Grazyna Wiejak-Roy, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. Grazyna is a senior lecturer in urban economics and real estate in the School of Architecture and Environment at the University of West of England, Bristol. Her teaching centres around real estate finance, investment and strategy. Her research is on investment strategies, transaction risk, and changing nature of the retail real estate market and land management. She carries nearly 20 years of experience in real estate consultancy, gained with Ernst Young and PwC, KPMG within the UK and in Australia. She is a fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, a chartered valuation surveyor, and a RICS assessor. Past member of the RICS governing bodies of Poland and Australia, and a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. She holds an MA in economics, an MSc in property appraisal and management, and a PG cert in academic practice. Grazyna is the co-founder of LINK, Land International Network for Knowledge, a platform for research, education and practical exchange on land management issues. You can find more details of that if you look at Grazyna's bio. Grazyna's keynote talk today is entitled Allotment Gardens in Warsaw, Poland, from fruit and veg to designed huts. The floor's yours, Grazyna.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll share my screen now, and then everyone should be able to see my slides. Can you all see my slides? Yep. Okay. So today's talk, as Darryl mentioned, is about allotment gardens in Warsaw, and this is based on my research conducted with Rafał Mazur from the Warsaw University of Technology. So I'll start by giving you a little bit of background why we looked at this topic, and then I will talk to you through our methodology and the perspectives which we investigated to understand in more details what is going on here. So I'll start by giving you a little bit of a background about the allotment gardens. So allotment gardens, especially in Central Eastern Europe, are often seen as a socialistic relic. And but this is completely wrong, because allotment gardens have been born in Europe in the 19th century, and they've survived pretty well in most of the European countries, as you can see on this map. And currently, they're very different across the various countries in terms of size, use, type of location, and their role in the city landscape, which ranges from pure farming, so fruit and veg, to pure leisure. So the concept of the small plots with often limited right life stems from the 19th century idea of providing small land parcels for family farming to support especially factory workers in cities and to fight diseases such as death time, tuberculosis, and also to promote better social behaviors and fight especially alcoholism. In Poland, first allotment gardens were created in the 20s of the 19th century, and they were founded typically by industrialists providing land for their workers. But that idea has evolved, and some gardens later on were simply donated by wealthy individuals for the wider public to form associations and manage larger parcels of land where people could where people could use the land to support their subsistence in the cities. But interestingly, in Poland, following quite a lot of general legal changes in the early 90s, after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, etc., the regulations around allotment gardens have broadly remained the same, and contrary to all the changes in all other areas of land management. So under normal market circumstances, one would reasonably expect that a type of a rather limited land right in a country where all other regulations are pretty strong and very clear would not survive. However, in Poland, despite of quite a lot of debates, the right has survived and is doing surprisingly well. So why did we have a closer look at the allotment gardens in Poland, and why in particular in Warsaw? Well, we've made some observations from the 90s till about, say, 5-10 years ago. The interest in allotment gardens was especially among elder gardeners, and so senior citizens using them basically as a retirement hobby. However, in the recent years, we have seen a significant social changes and much stronger interest, especially from the younger generations, and COVID restrictions only fueled that interest. So as you can imagine, now we see much more interest, especially from people in their 30s or 40s with completely different aims than the retirees. So because we have so many different changes, we decided that to start looking into, well, what is really going on there, and try to explore especially issues around the economics and the design, which is actually the first time someone is doing such research. So the aim of the paper was to explore the multidimensionality of changes in the allotment gardens. We looked and we used a quasi-pastel approach, including legal, political, social, environmental, design, and economic perspectives. So how did we go about this piece of research? So we started by reviewing rather scarce academic literature on allotment gardens in Poland and elsewhere. We then validated our observations by conducting archival searches, including reading Gardeners Association's journals and quite a lot of other grey literature and looking through the various themes in that literature. And we've then looked at pricing by checking various platforms where you can find quotes and portals with transactions. And that all was accompanied by a visual survey, during which we took a lot of pictures, which you can actually see in this presentation. So let's look for a moment at Warsaw. So Warsaw was fully destroyed in 1944, and following on that, the city was rebuilt based on the modernistic ideas stemming from the principles of set up by the International Congress of Modern Architecture. And the focus was on building small apartments to support the accommodation for otherwise homeless people returning to Warsaw after the war, and created livable places for the masses. Pre-war Warsaw was one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. So this was also an opportunity to create quite a lot of open spaces. And at the same time, the returning Warsavians needed some form of own spaces, especially for gardening, to support their subsistence. So this meant that the pre-war garden allotments in Warsaw became much more prominent, and new had to be created. However, interestingly, now we have some close to 190 family gardens in Warsaw, with 30,000 specific garden allotments used by families, and they take up about 2.3% of whole Warsaw area. So these are the red indications on the map. But more interestingly, as you can see, quite of them are located in very strategic locations, like, for example, the one presented here, which is surrounded by high-density residential buildings and located just 3 stops from the city center. So we looked at 5 such locations, which you can see here, which have in total close to 2,000 garden allotments. And most of them were created pre-Second World War, with only one created post later on in the 60s. 3 of them are in the highest land value locations in Warsaw. And if we take the number of allotment gardens, they cover about 7% of all allotment gardens in Warsaw, which is reasonable by our standards to draw some qualitative conclusions on what is going on in this space. So let me start with giving a little bit of a legal perspective. So currently, allotment gardens are regulated by the Act from 2013, which defines them as green areas and of public infrastructure, which means that they are subject to the same protection as forests and farmland, which is very, very important because we don't have that much of this in the cities. And the idea is that the users of the allotment gardens would use them for gardening, for relaxation and recreation only. Each allotment garden cannot be larger than 500 square meters. In Warsaw, they are smaller, between 350 and 400 in most cases. And a family garden is a collection of those allotment gardens, and it includes also common infrastructure, such as pathways, pipework, administrative buildings, sometimes playgrounds, or like here, the public open spaces for both the gardeners, for their association, and for the wider public. But the legal status is quite complex. They are seen by law as a type of a lease, but it's different. So typically, the state treasury owns the land, and then a gardeners association holds a long-term land lease from the state treasury, which is usually the peppercorn rent or no rent at all. And then the gardeners association can assign the allotment gardens to specific gardeners. However, this lease is not really a very much of a lease, because there is no rent, there is no end date or cancellation period. That right can only be transferred for free. It cannot be inherited. It includes an obligation to maintain the land and keep it in order. And also, it prohibits from permanent residency or any gainful activity. So whatever you grow, you can consume for your own purposes. As you can imagine, such complexities raise a lot of political discussions. In Poland, there is a Allotment Gardeners Association, and that institution is often perceived as a bit of a relic and not necessarily representing the best interest of the wider society, but more protecting the certain groups of users. In case of Warsaw, there are also still issues with quite a lot of land claims since the Second World War, which still have not been clarified. More recently, the biggest challenges stem from changes in local master plans and the currently redrafted spatial study, which designates some of those areas as still allotment gardens, but puts some of them at risk of disappearing. However, the current government of Warsaw region since 2020 has decided for the first time in the history to actually provide some money to support the allotment gardens. As you can see here on the lower picture, it's one example of a waste sorting facility which has been subsidized by the local government, but they also subsidized other activities which promote civic environmental awareness, spatial order, and environmental protection. So they do see them as an important element of the green infrastructure in the cities. So what are the various changes which I really wanted to look at? So from the social perspective, we see a generational swap up until 90s, or in some places to early 2000s. We have seen retirees and elderly people using those spaces. Since around 2000, we see the move towards young adults and or young families, which obviously use those allotment gardens very differently. And that obviously means that this change of use translates in how the greenery is managed. So we move away from intensive gardening and plantations towards relaxing, basically garden of leisure, where where the land use is not that intensive, and well, they look probably more tidy, but there are some losses as well. And we have seen this move, especially post-lockdown, during which allotment gardens proved to be a place which really saved people from a lot of mental issues, because they provided secluded, safe, open-air environment in the city. So those changes in uses, etc., they also interplay with the environmental issues. So all allotment gardens in Warsaw cover about 7% of all city green areas, and they play an important role in preservation of airing corridors. And here you can see on the map the example with the blue blue lines, which are the airing corridors, which support air distribution in the city and reduce pollution. The allotment gardens also play an important role in reducing urban heat and urban land heat island effect, and promote biodiversity. So on this graph, you can see again one of those examples, and as you can imagine, green is a positive sign. So So from the environmental perspective, one of the important roles is providing the biodiversity in the cities. So typically the traditional allotment gardens would have provided a lot of ornamental plants, fruits and vegetables, and also beehives. However, they are slowly disappearing, and land use practices are changing, and that is also driven by the fact that pictures like this of less maintained but very highly biodiverse allotment gardens are not supported as untidy by certain associations, and therefore put the owners of these plots at risk of even losing them. So what is now increasingly happening is that we see something like this. So clones of very much landscapes and very much cleared allotment gardens with perfectly trimmed lawns. They look really very much like clones and do not provide much of what they would have provided in the past. So therefore, their environmental benefits are reducing. So these observations led us to have a look at the design perspective, and it was what appeared to us was that we are actually the first ones to look at it in a systematic way. So up until in the 50s, in the 60s, we have seen that a prominent style or in design of the allotment garden huts was functionalism, where the focus was on storage and shelter, and then some changes started appearing, and since 70s we have observed that those cottages are also being used for recreation purposes. So some of them have been extended, some of them have been rebuilt, and typically they were accompanied with some smaller pieces of land covered with grass to create some place for recreation. So they were providing sort of a fake feeling of being in a holiday resort and being able to relax in the nice, comfortable environment. But as the time passed, we've also started seeing some other very interesting phenomena, and like the stuff which you can see on these pictures. So these are examples of huts built in the 80s and 90s, where the individualistic approach to architectural form started being very prominent in the Polish architecture. And that time, the general interest in the housing in Poland was moving towards vernacular design based on 19th century pseudo-classicistic houses. And as you can see from these pictures, this also translated in those mini structures in the allotment gardens, which clearly reflect the dreams and aspirations of some of the owners. Another interesting feature which we've observed more recently is a move towards, we call it sort of a neoclassical park, which means that some people are erecting buildings which refer to the 19th century aristocratic park structures. However, this is typically accompanied again with low maintenance lawns of no particular functions, and but at least there is some beauty. So as you can see here, they include quite a lot of rich wooden details, perhaps compensating for some owners' complexes. However, the lack of valuable plantations is a contradiction of the idea of allotment gardens being able to provide wider social benefits. So here you can see some other examples from our observations, which are clearly imitations of single-family houses, and those started appearing in 1990s. Those houses are mostly disproportionals, and very often they are either borderlines or they're typically borderlines of what is the maximal permitted area. And again, they contradict the concept of the allotment gardens. So let's now look at what are the very, very recent perspectives. So since 2013, since the new regulations, bigger houses can be built. They can be of a maximum of 35 square meters of built-up area and of maximum height of 4 meters if they have flat roof, or 5 meters if there is a steep roof.
Grazyna,
we have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, and terraces and verandas. And that leads us to actually something quite interesting, because we see that this is very often interpreted as an opportunity to create excessive buildings. As you can see here, they resemble single family houses and are completely disproportional, so not much of architectural value, sorry. But we are also seeing much more modern uses with much more interesting natural materials like those ones. However, these are again erected for passive uses. But there are some nice things as well about the current designs, and this is really what we would like to focus on. So we see a return to the original design concepts, using again natural materials, creation of small but well integrated spaces which support both gardening and leisure. And we hope that we'll see more of such uses in the future. So to finish, I would like to look at the economic perspective, because as you can imagine, with the change of users, the change of use, there is probably some impact on pricing. Pre-2010, prices were somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 pounds for one plot, including the cottage. Things have changed. Now the most expensive ones are sold at 35 to 50,000. With including obviously the cottages. So we see much that there is a big reflection in the pricing, and that may put some of the especially older users at risk, because they are being pushed out from the market by the newer, more passive users. So what do we conclude from this research, and what do you think about the next steps? So we see the allotment gardens as a well-created and well-established nature-based solution to support urban living and help sustainability in the cities. However, we see certain issues and certain challenges, and in preserving those sites, and we believe that each site needs an individual assessment to justify long-term position in the city, and the district, and the locality, and what role should those larger areas of gardens play. We think that preserving them will should support and not inhibit urban changes. So therefore, we see them more as places which are opening to the wider public, where there is more support or stimulation of certain behaviors, so that we can minimize those negative examples which I have shown you. And we think that there is a need to strike a balance to preserve the privacy of the users while keeping them open and to the wider public, and providing the wider social benefits for everyone in the cities. So we expect that this research will spark more systematic discussions on those allotment gardens, both in Poland but also in other countries. We had recently discussions about, for example, Germany, where similar phenomena are happening. So we hope that we are contributing to some discussions there. I know today we'll hear a lot of talks around sustainability and how to address it. And I think while one garden of 300 or 400 square meters cannot make much of the difference, we have in Warsaw 30,000 of them and several 100,000 in all across Poland. They all together make a big difference, and we hope that there could be some solutions around both natural and more design using the nature and design perspectives to ensure that those spaces really serve the purpose and help us maintain comfortable places in the country. Darryl, that's all from me. I think, did I manage? I did manage on time. So I'll stop sharing. And I think we have a minute or so for questions.
Thank you very much, Grazyna. That was wonderful. I can see that there is a hand up already. We're going to have a couple of questions because we've our next presentation starts at 10 o'clock. So, Alison Pooley, did you have your hand up to ask a question?
I did have my hand up, yeah. Thank you. So it's a really interesting and insightful presentation. I just wanted to ask you about how the a little bit more, if you could expand on how you see the sort of allotments unraveling or not unraveling, the future, you know, the sort of real direction that they're going in, because we have something similar in the UK, and I know that they do in Copenhagen as well, the gardens there. So I just wondered if there was a sort of return to nature, or, you know, sort of kind of a rewilding idea, because that's something that's sort of taking on, and, you know, just to address that biodiversity. I just wondered what you thought. Just expand a little bit more on the direction of travel, really, of these gardens.
Yes, I think the biggest challenge in Warsaw that we see the generational shift and the reduction of biodiversity which we had before, and I think I see this as a real challenge, and I think this is one of the areas which I hope that the government will address in the future. Well, Poland has new elections in 6 weeks, so we'll see which party wins, because I think a lot will depend on that. But I think biodiversity is, to me, the most important one to retain in the allotment gardens.
Can I suggest that actually, because of the timing, the next session's about to start, that if you have any questions for Grazyna, I assume you're coming over. You'll be in the amenity space later on after the next session, when we have a break and coffee, but there is a space for people to meet up and ask further questions. Are you going to be around for a little while, Grazyna? Are you here all day?
Yes, I will be there, yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
Not all day, but I will be for the next break, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, look, thank you very, very much, everybody. I'm conscious that the next session's about to start, so I'd like to thank Grazyna for a really interesting talk, and I look forward to having a good conversation at some time, Grazyna, if that's possible, because
Sure.
I actually have my own allotment, and I'd like to discuss the opportunities there. But
Perfect.
anyway, I'll just to say that everybody knows where they're going. Well, I'm assuming everybody knows where they're going. There's 2 sessions happening in parallel now, and you can jump across to room 1 or 2 depending on the actual presentations you're delivering, or the presentations you want to hear. So we're going to leave this session now and move on to the next session. Thank you very much, Grazyna.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Okay, thank you.